Thus, Airtel, GVA, and MTN. In 2021, we were able to move our infrastructure towards the ARPC data center. And currently in 2023, we've got interconnection with other internet suppliers, such as GVA. We've added a cloud network. And we're working with PCH as well. So that's the history of our IXP. Now, looking at the infrastructure, as you can see, we've got an aggregation switch through which all the routers of the members are connected. And this router is connected on an aggregation router. We've also got servers, and all the traffic that reaches the switch is handled with this infrastructure. PCH has also been created. There's a few technical aspects to sort, but that's a new exchange point that can be created. Now, in terms of services, we've got two types of interconnection ports, 1 or 10 gig. And we're trying to supervise as much as possible the traffic. There are still a few issues. I was discussing it with a colleague to see at which level we can work on supervision to have a better monitoring of the traffic, seeing which type of application is most used at the IXP, getting an idea of the volume to accompany this application, and depending on the use by operators. And the PCH will really help. We can increase traffic for IXP because we'll have better DNS resolution that will certainly improve our services. In terms of technological contribution, CGIX brought technological expertise to support the internet ecosystem in Congo. We provided training as well. We trained stakeholders of the industry. We ran workshops, technical workshops, for instance, in relation to BGP routing protocol. We raised awareness on best practices for interconnection of members at the IXP. And there's also a financial contribution to improve the quality of services, to reduce costs of the capacity for the international bandwidth for operators, and we reduced latency times. And that was feasible thanks to all the efforts of our regulator, our ARPC. Now, looking at the traffic itself, if you can see from the screen, you can see that in 2013, the traffic was very limited, but then there's a significant growth from 2020. And we've reached 11 gig entering and about 10-ish outgoing. We've had a few issues in 2022. So there was a notable dip in traffic, and we're trying to address the issues related especially with interconnection with internet service providers. Some ISPs don't necessarily share all their prefixes, and we need to do more awareness raising to show them the benefits of engaging fully so that they realize how important it is to share these prefixes at the IXP. So there's work still to be done. In terms of volume, if you see here, in 2021, we moved from 39 teraoctets to, so with 39 coming and tera entering, 40 coming out. In 2023, 2024, we think that we will have an even better level of traffic. Now, looking ahead, as I mentioned, we really want to settle a root server, a DNS root within the DNS root project. As Samir said, an IXP is not just for operators or ISPs. We also want to attract banks and ministries. We're, for instance, in discussion with the finance ministry. And we want to work more with the GVA operator. The technical side is already done. We need to finalize peering with some operators or ISPs. So we really want to bring as many companies, businesses, but also schools, education institutions. And we really think that we need to have cache servers at the level of our IXP so that all our members can benefit from access to Google and Facebook, and it can be handled locally so that if there is a cut with some operators, the service won't be interrupted. They'll have access to the services of these cache. We also want to reinforce the capacity for the points for the connected members, and we have been working at workshops with ICANN and ISOC, and we're welcoming their support. So that's the overview of IXP for the Congo IXP. So I'll gladly take questions. Thank you very much. So that's the overview for CGIX, the Congolese IXP. Without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Nico, and then we'll give the floor to Landry for Gabon, and we'll take questions at the end. Nico, can you hear us? And are you able to do your presentation now? Yes, thank you very much, Guylain. I'm sorry, I have limited control of my environment. I'll do my best to try and share the experience that we have in the Democratic Republic of Congo. If there are cuts, I'm sorry, it's because I have limited control over the environment from which I'm working. I took my flight from Romania. I've left Romania. I was with Samuel. I'm in France. I have no control really of my surroundings. So let's see together what experience we've had in our IXP in Kinshasa. We call it RDC IX, and it was supported by ISP DRC. We have infrastructures, but we needed infrastructures to support local traffic and to retain local traffic. We wanted it to be an exchange point, but a community exchange point. So there are currently 3 IXPs in DRC, but we started with initial one, Kinix. Then the second one is in the south of the country, which is called Lubix. And the third one is on the east of the country and over 2,000 kilometers from Kinshasa, and it's the Gomix IXP. Now let's start with the launch of Kinix. It wasn't easy because the association actually started after the creation of Kinshasa. So Kinshasa's IXP brought together members who were already involved in a project. They were involved in the Katia project. It was at the time supported by AFRISPA, and it had the support of an international research centre, a Canadian one. The project was launched, operators came, they connected, but as they didn't know each other, it didn't really take off. It lasted only 6 months. It was a failure, and it put off operators. Why? Because there was no connection between the members. They didn't trust each other. And just as a side story, the project was hosted by one operator, so it wasn't a neutral location. And it has to be said, at the time, people didn't really know much about routing within networks. They didn't really grasp the key principles, the BGP protocol. So it contributed to the collapse of a project. Now, what we had to do within the association is facilitate meeting of people so that they could get together and think together about what they could do to avoid such a failure and move on, move forward. And that's what happened in 2006 with the launch of today's version of the Kinshasa IXP. And the implementation happened in 2012. And thanks to the dynamics that was created, we're able to host it in a neutral location. We thought, we're going to find a neutral location. We're going to train people with the routing and train them for managing routing at the IXP level. And we're going to look at what other people are doing to see how we can develop peering. And I remember clearly, before the launch of the IXP, one operator took 2 people under their wing and sent them to Kenya to see what was happening there and how it worked. And we drew from the experience of this Kenyan IXP. So this exchange of good practice really was beneficial. And we could launch this IXP in 2012, thanks to donations from members. Members gave either equipment or funds. And we benefited from the support of ISOC, who supported us so that the Kinshasa IXP was launched in 2012. As you'll see on the next photo, the IXP was hosted in a very small location, 3.8 meters by 2.2 meters. You couldn't even host 3 racks. But you had to start somewhere. And you'll see that was what the first IXP looked like. It was hosted by an operator. It was basically what you see, a stack of equipment on the table. Now, new inception of the IXP with the group dynamic, we started, and as one of my friends, the previous CEO of Afrinic, you don't buy an Airbus plane to ferry around 3 people. You start by a small plane and then you scale it up and buy bigger planes as you have more clients. So we started with 1 rack in a small office, and most of the equipment we had were purchased through small contributions or donated. And the staff handling the IXP were volunteering at the start. The person got $50 per month. So, and even though he was handling the IXP on a daily basis, but that enabled it to develop and thrive. And We also used connections so that people were trained before the launch of the IXP, not just people, technical staff in our members' companies, but also the operators within the IXP. And we invited also people who weren't, their counterparts in companies that were not yet members so that they could learn about the IXP. Then following the 2012 IXP launch, we developed so we maintained the management side, and there was a lot of added benefit, added value. We had 4 operators. Even one operator left because he didn't see the benefits of remaining part of the IXP. And the management committee and the operational team had to get together and think about what they could do to make the exchange point more attractive so that people would come and connect. And that was handled, as Samuel mentioned, through contact established at forums, networking with other operators, other stakeholders of our local ecosystem. They joined in 2006, and the IXP took a new route. Up until 2012, it was totally managed by the association. We were at a very, very early stage. In 2016, with the increased added value benefits, we became more attractive. And we were able to be more autonomous. The IXP could pay for its rent, pay for staff, to ensure its own energy supply, electricity supply. And I would like to actually say a bit more about electricity supply. Previously, we had one access to electricity through an operator. But as this operator also had a generator, we gained, after 2016, we gained some autonomy. We evolved. We left this tiny room, moved to a larger room. How could I describe it? Much roomier, where we could have all the racks you see on the screen. And we also have a generator, an electricity generator, making us more autonomous in terms of energy supply. And there's been a considerable increase in traffic on that version of the IXP. We were also working at attracting international CDNs, but we also worked at supporting local CDNs, people who provide services and connect through the IXP at this level. We really approached them, we supported them, we helped them access the resources needed. So we put them in touch with Afrinic so that they got their ASN, IXP address, and that we contributed to developing the local ecosystem. Now, this is what we've got. This is the pinnacle, so to speak. We are completely autonomous, and we generate money. We have much more CDNs. We have more operators, and we're attractive to operators. We can even fund to an extent the next 2 stages of a project, which is working with Lukumbashi and Goma, the other 2 IXPs. So we are able to partly fund the development of these other 2 IXPs. And you can see that Kinshasa has started slowly at a modest level, but as you can see, the red arrow worried us, because to be an IXP, we have to have a minimum of 3 operators interconnected. But at one point, we were a bit anxious as one of our operators left. We were left with just 3 and we were concerned. We thought, oh no, if one more person had left at that point, we wouldn't be an IXP anymore. But as I said, thanks to the group dynamic, we were able to overcome this hurdle. And now Kinshasa is dynamic. It's an important IXP for the region, for the continent as well, with peaks reaching 50 gigabytes. After that, the 2 IXPs that were developed for Kinshasa have not had the same experience because we had more means, we had a dynamic in place, and these 2 IXPs started right away and skipped the early stages. They were able to be at a more mature stage. They skipped stages because staff was trained, the structure could be mirrored. They also integrated efficiently in the ecosystem and contributed to the growth of this e-economy. We've seen a development of digital infrastructures. Many operators joined by radio operation, but as we developed the infrastructures, operators thought, oh, well, it's worth investing in optic fiber so that they could connect to the IXP properly and get all the benefits of content and improve their use. So the existence of the IXP contributed to the development of ancillary infrastructures. It also contributed to the development of hosting facilities in RDC, thanks to the IXP, thanks to all the thriving dynamic and the technical improvements like creation of a cache. Investors are much more interested. They're investing more in hosting. In the DRC, we currently have 2 data centers, 2 neutral data centers, which are in construction, meaning that there's going to be room for more stakeholders. Following that, having an IXP also meant that we were able to meet demand and support local CDNs. Currently, there are 4 CDNs. A couple are focusing on video. One is focusing on services, kind of integrated services for businesses. And the 4th one is joining us and looking at added value for companies. We also have worked on hosting with hosts looking at developing websites. And instead of hosting websites elsewhere abroad, they are contacting us to see if they can use their applications at a local level, meaning that they can ensure a better experience for their users. So that's the impact the IXP has had for the development of the internet ecosystem in the DRC. Now, of course, as all organizations, we're not yet where we would like to be. We have more projects. We're looking ahead. We want to go forward. And our main challenge is to really embed the structures of our 3 IXPs in the existing framework to consider whether a 4th IXP could be built elsewhere. Because before going to a new city, we do a sort of business study. We try and see whether there's a huge demand for services, whether it's a city that has other resources like electricity. Does the city have digital transport infrastructures? Depending on the profile, then we make the decision whether or not to create an IXP there. But we also want to contribute to the development of the ecosystem, the national ecosystem, to ensure that our citizens and the communities within our country can not just access content, but also contribute to content and to hosting local content. And with that in mind, we're reaching out to companies, we're reaching out to administrative structures. We're really engaging with them to show them the importance of connecting to the IXP, even simply for security reasons, to make an effort to host their own applications, to make sure that they're hosted locally. And we're really working at building managerial capacity, but also technical capacity to develop in IT skills and IT knowledge. So this is a summary of what we have done and what we want to do in the future. Thank you.
A round of applause for Nico. So Nico, who is here representing the whole ISPA DRC, who's in charge of IXPs in DRC. So 3 IXPs, 1 in Kinshasa, Mumbashi, and Goma. Maybe before we move to the final presentation with Landry, I just wanted to say that because we ran over and we didn't have a coffee break, we will try and have a coffee break indoors. So I'm sorry if there's a bit of noise, but we're going to have the coffee break in the room, and we can keep following presentations and ask questions. So make sure you write down all your questions. We will have a batch of questions after this third presentation. Landry, are you with us online? And can you try and start your presentation? Yes. Bonjour, Guylain. Yes, I'm online. I'm ready to go. You can go. The floor is yours. Okay. Can you see my slides? Yes, we can see them. You can put it in presentation mode, maybe? Yes, it should be. Hello, everyone. Hello, Guylain. Hello, everyone else. I'm here. Landry Ningombe. I'm in charge of the exchange point in Gabon. I'm just going to give you a little bit of feedback on our experience. We started things in 2014. So GABX is a groupment of operators and internet service providers, and the organization of the management and governments is a GIE, so an economic interest group that started in 2014. We've got 13 founding members. Out of the 13 founding members, we've got 2 operators, 2 ISP providers, and 1 user member. So GABX wanted to have a rather open organization. Everyone could participate, and the economic interest group with 13 members. Just to mention that as things stand, certain members have had to cease trading. But what we wanted to do with this group was to improve quality and resilience of local internet traffic. We wanted to reduce transit cost for operators, and we wanted to favor the rise of a local digital ecosystem. So present members for GABX. So just to give you a little bit of history on GABX, after we started, we had the main operators, Gabon Telecom, Airtel, Azure. Some of these disappeared, but we had quite a few operators who were fairly motivated, and the Gabon IXP came from government motivations, the government's the one who started the project. And most members then were different ISPs nationally. So there was an interesting dynamic at the start. And since 2014 and up to 2019, we had the majority of operators who were connected, and we had a good group dynamic, good traffic. We had between 1.5 and 2 gigabytes of traffic, quite positive. But after this initial launch phase, we ran into quite a few issues. And one of the problems we faced was something with members. Things were going well until a few lost motivation. And a lot of them jumped ship. Between 2014 and 2019, we had 7 members that were still connected. And today, yet again, many members have left. And these members who are still connected were founding members. And at present, the members who are connected are GVA, so we've got the state who takes care of the digital infrastructure. So we've got the ANIMF, who was there at the start and sees the economic interest group. So l'ANINF, the ANINF, we've got GVA. A few months ago, we had IP9, but they in a phase of ceased trading. We were facing several issues, and members who ceased trading is one of them. At present, we only have 2 operators who are connected on our IXP, the ANIMF, and a box. We've got Airtel, who's also connected. But as you can see on my slide, they're only doing peering with 1 operator. That's their policy. It's the current policy, just 1 operator. That's the state operator. We've also got on our IXP, and that has been the case since 2014. We've got a Google cache and a Facebook cache. The Facebook cache has been installed, but the difficulty we have is that Facebook wants 400 megabytes per second to feed into that cache, but we do not have that. So we've got limits in what we can put online. We've got maybe 150, 100 megabytes that are provided to us by the ANIMF. We've also got a connectivity to Google that is provided by the ANIMF. It's available via that provider. So we've got that via the ANIMF peering. And we've also got PCH. So we've got 2 local members who are connected at present. And as it has been said in other presentations, I know that we need at least 3. Because if not, people would think, why not just connect to ANIMF and then peer? So I think we've remained quite optimistic. A few months ago, there were 3 of us on the IXP. IP9, however, has ceased trading and has disconnected. And we're very sad about it. It was one of the main operators who was very motivated. They were fairly understanding, and they were part of the positive group dynamics. As I was saying, between 2014 and 2019, there was a good group dynamic. There were 7 of us connected. Now there's only 2 of us. This is related to specific challenges, difficulties that we're facing. And the main one is the lack of implication of participation of members. We've got we had 13 members at the start of all this. So these members don't really participate, and they didn't participate and contribute, aside from the ANIMF, who kind of was at the origin of the project because they're the operator for the state. These different members seem to have a policy where they don't want to peer with others. We tried to raise awareness on all this, meet people, try to make them aware of the importance of the project, but the feedback that we got was that they didn't see the interest, the point. There was a low density of services or of local content. We don't have much in Gabon, and people don't see the immediate benefits. For those who were connected, one of them, for them, was the Google Cache, because they didn't have one, but a few years later they acquired their own cache, and immediately after that they disconnected from the IXP. So we've got a lack of cooperation from local operators. There's no local interdiscussions. One of the members, as I was saying, only peers with the ANIMF, so the state operator, and keeps refusing to peer with IPNF or IFBox. We've got a lack of implication from the founding members. These founding members just don't participate in the IXP's activities. Sometimes we organize events, we communicate around all of this, we try and kind of incentivize them, ask them to come provide technical support, talk about the different resources, but we are struggling with resources, especially around contributions. The IXP is no longer part of the ANIMF, it's more or less autonomous, and so it has certain needs, and some members just don't participate in that aspect of the IXP. And finally, there's a question of content that is hosted. It's in not really evolving. We've got a lot of people who develop incubators. They contribute to development, but what we've noticed is that hosting is done abroad. That's justified because we don't have enough structure. We don't have a data center. We can't host all this data. The only hosting organization is, again, the ANIMF, state operator, but they host content for administration. They manage all of that. So we've got a little bit of content in Gabon, but everything for taxes, for example, we've got different apps that are hosted in Gabon. And some of that can be accessed through the IXP, but some operators aren't connected, and therefore we face certain difficulties for users who are part of some networks, and if they're not connected to the IXP, they can't access the whole government structure. Finally, and something I've touched upon already, is the disappearance of certain members in our ecosystem. A few years ago, we had quite a few operators, a lot of ISPs, and access providers, but their main service was internet access, and for the last few years, these providers can't keep up, and therefore, as I was saying, IPNF have ceased trading. Other operators who were providers, but also members of the IXP, who don't exist anymore. Despite all of this, like say, we're still optimistic. We work with our peers, the Internet Society, with Guillaume, Jean-Baptiste. We work together to try and improve the situation. We try and have kind of an educational side to all of this and explore different points of view, see with which other stakeholders we could communicate. We've met with different people. We try and talk about the IXP. And we try and have them participate, engage them in our different activities. We've also started different actions to strengthen the participation of current members for the ones that still exist or are still active. We also plan to develop some training because quite a few members at present still don't really understand what we do, our activities. And so we're trying to find different ways to explain all of this to them so that we can work together. So we're going to organize workshops to raise awareness and to train people. We also have another goal, and that's a project I think we started 2 or 3 years ago. It's already been discussed with some people, but we wanted to see how we could develop this question of local content development. Personally, I think that creating data centers, large data centers could be useful, but I also think that if we could have simple models, and I've discussed this with some of you, then maybe we could motivate operators, at least the ones who still exist, motivate them to develop local content without necessarily wanting to do things on the large scale, not necessarily a large data center or anything. I think we could try and set up a small server. We've got operational operators who have their infrastructures in place in their technical facilities, and their infrastructures, they work, they're secure. Why not use a couple servers, set them up, and then have messaging servers or site hosting servers, and gradually, as I was saying, you know, it's a picture that's been given of the Airbus. You can't put 2 or 3 people. You start small, and gradually you see how things evolve and how you can develop. And that's, I think, what we want to do. We want to kind of push people to do what they can with current structures, and then see how we can move towards a larger data center, for example. So we're here in this dynamic. We're trying to motivate people to create local content and call on people who are hosting content abroad to start hosting them in Gabon. That's part of the goals we have, things we want to do. We're still trying to work to make sure the IXP remains active, operational. But as Samuel was saying, technically, we've got the technical aspects down, but I think, as it's been mentioned, it's more about communication and relationships and all that. That's all for the Gabon IXP, and I'm available should you have any questions. Thank you very much. Round of applause for Landry. Thank you, Landry, for this presentation in Gabon. And I think maybe we can see if anyone has a question. Jean-Baptiste, if you can keep an eye on the chat. If you're online, please feel free to also ask a question online. We can read them out in the room, and then our speakers can answer them. Is there anyone in the room who has a question? better with the mic on. Maxime, I have a question for Gabix. I'm quite sad when I hear about all these efforts and the lack of results, and the fact that the team really does everything they can, and then there's a lack of participation from members, especially founding members. I'm shocked. But to stay on the positive note, I think that the goals you've set are the good ones. Apologies, your interpreter cannot hear the speaker anymore. And I think you need to focus on development. So rather than using the energy and training on BGP protocols and setting up servers, maybe the IXP can purchase or get servers via donations, and then these servers can be used to create a hosting service and build from there. Once companies, businesses are connected to the IXP, so some providers will have to come back because their customers will be connected to the IXPs. And then they will have to peer because content has been developed. So what I see is that content is there, but some people turn their backs on the IXP. And my question is, content, Google, Facebook caches, did they come before or after these people jumped ship? I think you just need to be maybe more proactive and create a hosting offer, even if it's quite a simple one, and gradually maybe small cloud services that are hosted on these servers and build up from there. If it increases, then maybe monetize it. But I'm convinced that this could force the stakeholders' hand and encourage them to join back. Yes, thank you, Simon. I think you're absolutely right. If you've got incentive measures and then things don't work, then the IXP can try something different and do things in the different markets. I know it can be difficult because there are some hosting providers in place. But there's seeding, so that's like you plant seeds that can then develop, and different stakeholders can then participate. So I think that was an interesting point, both for Gabon and other IXPs. I had another point I wanted to make around BGP training. They're needed, obviously, but is it enough to prevent people from leaving? Was there enough training around skills? Maybe people are worried that they'll make mistakes on the IXP. So another suggestion that I would make, and I did this in France, people were worried about the setting up of all this. So it was training on routing, and BGP could be managed by the IXP. So when a new stakeholder connected, you could offer to set all of it up, all of their protocols and their BGP for them once they join the IXP. So you could say we would provide the mutualized routers and hosted routers, and once you join, we will help you transfer all this knowledge, these skills, and not wait for people to know BGP to do all this. I think it's too wide a gap for them to do it all on their own. So I completely agree. I think it's small steps and see if we can support them. In general, not only in Central Africa, but there's a need for IXPs to do a lot, make quite a few efforts in all different aspects of this space. They need to attract, they need to make sure people don't jump ship. And we've seen this in Rwanda. having Google caches, Netflix, Facebook, Meta, Instagram, all these is not a determining factor to keep large operators if they have their own caches. They may leave if they have their own caches, but you have to try and have these elements that can kind of sediment their presence in your IXP. I think we should prevent maybe Meta from giving operators caches. Obviously, the commercial model being what it is, I don't think that's a real option. I think we once got to 10 gigabytes, and we lost half because Meta gave the cache to MTN and RPL. And so the IXP went back down to 2 gigabytes. We're now back up at 4, I think. But it's not a bad thing. But it did contribute to increasing local traffic and traffic in the country. Jean-Baptiste? Thank you, Guylain. Maybe one last tip. Maybe Gabix can use this, but other countries too. It's around this quality of cables and underwater cables. We're kind of an inland country, so we've had experiments. We had an agreement with Google and connected Burkina directly to Google's system, and this meant that people who had local caches had an update that was available via the IXP. So that may be that kind of extra element that you could have. If the IXP is well structured in Brazzaville here or Libreville or the different IXPs in DRC, if you have specific cables that run through a specific place, if you position yourself adequately, you can maybe be connected on a provider's service or network. And that means the different operators who have a cache can also connect to you to update the cache. So this can also help with operational issues. If you can't update a cache, that can be a problem. But if the cache, if the cache is with certain operators, it could be useful to have the update that is available via your IXP. There's no perfect trick, but you know, if you kind of adapt and tweak things depending on your situation, it might help improve the situation, build a community for the future. And I think for me, the most important thing is you know, solidarity, because if you work together, you can overcome many challenges and get to the next step, so that you've got better internet in the country. I think that's what any operator provider wants. It's to improve customer experience and the client's experience. You need to make sure that you focus on that and you know, focus on that client-oriented approach. And the commercial service will want to make a difference so that we can work together to improve the internet in the country. Thank you.
What I noted from the various contributions, including the DRC contribution, is really the involvement of members. I think it's maybe worth considering a whole session dedicated to it, to identify methods to promote engagement and a sustained relationship with members, because I noticed that members lost interest. couldn't really see benefits in staying part of the IXP. And that led to a drop in the number of members. If members don't really see the benefits of being members and remaining members, maybe we can do something to better engage with them and show them the sustained benefits of remaining part of the network and the IXP. Thank you for this very valid comment. If you've seen, GEBIX is not based on an association. And I think the model itself, the governance model, comes with various types of problems. There's benefits and drawbacks to each type of models. Francis is going to look at governance in more detail tomorrow. They started as an association, but they changed. And I think maybe when there is an evolution, a change in the governance model ought to be considered. When you look at most IXPs in the region, well, and beyond Central Africa and Western Africa or in French-speaking Africa, we're faced with a significant challenge because many of our problems seem to stem from the model of governance. And how also, to an extent, to how the IXP was created. The funding in particular, does it come from the regulator? Or who's got a stake, literally and financially, in the IXP? Usually there's a connection with a ministry, and that can imply some reluctance on the part of potential stakeholders, but also international stakeholders, because it is actually questioning how neutral the IXP is when it's funded in that way. What's important is that right from the start, there needs to be a contribution of all types of stakeholders, and they have to be on an even keel. Everybody has to be on the same level. And that goes as far as the voting. The regulator, if he's involved, should not have more votes, shouldn't be the main stakeholder. There's systems where you've got, governmental infrastructures, their own AS, etc. But if you give them more voices to a ministry, for instance, it creates questions as to the neutrality. There needs to be scope for respect and discussion. A committed member is really important. It's not really the switch that's the problem. That can be secured easily. It's a technical aspect. But ensuring that stakeholders come, trust each other, and don't think that there's going to be some sort of use or manipulation of traffic, that's really key. There's fear that if I send traffic to the IXP, somebody is spying on it, analysing what I'm putting forward. There's concern that if you push one of your members towards the IXP, you're going to lose a client. It might be snapped by somebody else. And that can be a concern. That's why you really need to address all the main fears so that stakeholders understand how things work, that it's transparent, and that they also understand what benefits there are in it for them. At the very early stage, you might come across somebody with a significant number of clients, lots of connections. They might already have international connections, and they'll tell you, well, I'm not short of capacity. What's the benefit for me to join the IXP? What have I got to gain if they are already important players in the game? So there needs to be a better understanding of who benefits and what benefits there are to peering within the same country. and often people don't realize the benefit of peering within the country and networking, joining the IXP so that traffic stays in the country. Operators don't necessarily quite realize the implications of getting what they provide from elsewhere. They don't necessarily see how much of a saving it can be. So in my view, this kind of conversation can reinforce understanding and there needs to be a really level playing field so that all the players know they're on the same level. It also needs to be a flexible structure to facilitate trust and to ensure that everyone sees the financial benefits, but also possible technical benefits in being part of a group. And it's maybe worth considering that kind of element in the technique, but I think that kind of overlaps with one of the points of the agenda for tomorrow, and we could discuss then. Thank you. Online, we have a comment from Kofi and 2 questions asked by Cédric. So Kofi Armand is in charge of CVX, the Côte d'Ivoire IXP, and he's saying that the development of an IXP relies on trust, transparency. It's essential to the governance. For the Côte d'Ivoire IXP, it was crucial. We were very forward and transparent. And we have about over 1,000 prefects. We haven't got cash at the moment, but we often reach 5 gig. To sum up, it takes time and we need to constantly reassure stakeholders and we need to be very transparent about our management. That's what Kofi was saying. 2 questions from Cédric. First of all, he's asking a question. Est-ce que so question for Boris and Landry about the fees for a connection could be off-putting. It might be too much for some of the small operators. The general fees. And the next question is there a regulation in place for your country at the national level? A regulation in place affecting XPs, or is the market open? Any reaction? Nico? Nico and André, you both raise your hands. Thank you, Guylain, for giving me the floor. The sound cut. First of all, I would like to react to the point regarding the dynamics you have to create to involve CDNs. At our humble level, we noticed that each time we reach out to CDNs, the first question is asked them is, what stake does the state have? Is the state in charge of your exchange point? There's a concern about state involvement, but they keep asking the question, does the government access your peering platform? In other words, they want to know, we want to operate as the IXP as a sort of village. So by that, I mean, we need to be clear about the functioning. We need to be open. There needs to be a feeling of trust and people need to know it's safe. We need this content. we don't have much where we are. That's what we've experienced when we reached out to CDNs. So convincing them is easy as long as you show them your model of governance, a model in which there's not too much state intervention, and then showing them that we collaborate with the state. That creates trust. And now in DRC, we've got a number of CDNs. We've got PCH, for instance, to name a few, and we're trying to reach out to other service providers. That's my first point. Now, regarding Cedric's question, I think it really depends. There are costs for an IXP to operate. If you have few members, the fees are higher because of these minimum costs, but the more members you have, automatically, as often in Africa, these structures are not training structures. You can easily reduce costs and make the access easier. But we don't have necessarily funding, so we need to rely on subscriptions fees. So the fewer, the higher the price. The larger the number, the lower the fee. Fund 6 has how many members? It's enormous. But if you reach an IXP with just 3 members, the 3 members need to absorb the basic costs. With Kinix, when we launched Kinix, we only had about 6 members. So each member had to contribute a significant amount, but now we've launched Goma's IXP without asking members anything because there were more members involved and we didn't need their contribution to set everything up. And we were able to launch Goma without any contribution from operators. So it's down to scale and development. Thank you. Landry, you had raised your hand. Do you want to react? Yes, I wanted to react to the question related to the price for accessing the IXP. Yes, it can be a drawback. It can hold potential members back. We had to increase our prices a while back and operators didn't like it and complained. So we had to sort of freeze fees. Since 2019, 2020, we've told all our members, including those who left, that if they come back to the IXP, at the moment, there's no fear. There's never been any discussion on defining fees. So when we speak to operators, they have no cost. They don't have to pay. We told big operators that if they left and they want to come back to the IXP, it won't cost them. We're all in the same boat. We need to see how things work. We need to see how it works, and then we'll discuss. Besides, these operators are part of the executive committee. They're involved in the decision regarding policies, and that includes fees. So in Gabon, it's really not prices that are an issue. Thank you. But Boris, maybe some insight into regulations. Anything has been done to encourage IXPs, to regulate IXPs? Is there any connection? In the case of Gabon, there's no policy to that effect. When we created the IXP, the regulator was involved in the discussions, but There's never been any restriction, any law regulating IXPs. It's not really a stumbling block, because everything we've been able to do up to now has done without regulators' input. Thank you. Can I contribute for DRC? For DRC, the regulator was always kept informed of what we were doing, because we consider that we're operating in a state, we need to operate legally. We can't operate without the established authority be kept informed. The regulator is attached to the ministry. So we're reaching out to them. It's not them policing us. We have good relationships with the regulator, and it's important. And with a new law regarding telecommunication in the DRC, at least we have noted that the management of IXPs, especially community ones, and we're not talking about business IXPs, we talked about it with them, and we were associated to the discussion for the framework legislation. And I think in an environment like ours, we're trying to develop the ecosystem. It's also our role to preach for our parish, so to speak. And sometimes regulators take decisions not necessarily because there's ill intent, but rather because they were ill informed. So it's our role to be forward and proactive and inform them so that they can make the right decision for the interest of the ecosystem. Thank you. I would like to invite you to applaud the members of our panel. Thank you. I don't see any additional questions in the chat. There's one in the room. If there's further questions in the chat, you're welcome. So your name and structure. I am from Gabon. I have a question. Why have you not reached out to other big companies that you're solvent and that you're a good investment? For instance, in Gabon, we're trying to get to people, to companies to join the IXP, but if information doesn't get to these big companies, there's a problem. So why don't you reach out to these big businesses? And there's a number of them in Gabon. I don't understand why it's so stuck on these few people who actually sometimes leave. Boris, an answer? Yes, I can answer. Thank you for this question. It is a very valid point. Well, yes, we did reach out to these stakeholders. We've met EcoBank. We've had discussions with an insurance company. We've reached out to the CNSS. It's the insurance fund. But so far, we've not had the chance to meet with them. We've also reached out to other important actors. I don't have the list with me. We did that about 2 years ago. We've launched an awareness campaign targeting these stakeholders who are a bit maybe out of the ordinary profile, and we met with some of them, but they don't seem to get it. The standard stakeholders, such as service and internet providers, don't really get it. So these new actors, you go to them, you introduce yourself, you go to EcoBank, BGFE, you do your presentation, you explain what an IXP is, and they say, oh, okay, sounds interesting, that's good, we'll get in touch with you. A few emails are exchanged, but you can tell there's not much trust behind. So what we really need to do is to continue and to keep chasing them, to keep having a conversation with them, to create trust. So to answer clearly, yes, we have approached these actors you were mentioning. Thank you very much. Gina, I wanted to add to what Landry was saying. We can reach to ISOC for support because they can give clout to our speech and make it easier for stakeholders to understand the benefits. ISOC will have some clouds when it comes to convincing banks. They can show examples of other banks connected to other IXPs, and they can explain the benefits for a bank to joining the IXP. I think that the message will go across. We're not bankers. So how can we really speak to a bank and convince them? It's a bit complex for us. But if another bank speaks to that bank and say, oh, we saw benefits to it, they were positive fallouts from joining an IXP, then I think the banks, for instance, to continue with this example, will better grasp the benefits of joining the IXP. Thank you very much, Nicole. We said there was going to be a coffee break, so don't hesitate to get up. Grab something quickly. We're not going to stop. We're going to keep on talking. We've got another 10 minutes before we can close this session. So Jean-Baptiste, you wanted to react? Yes. I agree with Nico. He's asking for support from ISOC. We face the same kind of challenges. We've tried to approach a few ministries that should be interested in this kind of service. When we explain the benefits, what there is in it for them, the response we get is, oh, that sounds good, it sounds interesting, but there's no follow-up. We need an external body to give more gravitas, to instill more trust and explain what we can do, really. Thank you. You can't really be a prophet in your own land. And it's true that it's tricky to reach to the not so mainstream stakeholders. I think more training is needed. The example of Francix is very good. Francix president suggested very useful strategies that they implemented successfully, and that would be helpful. For instance, help with configurations, but to reach out to these not so standard partners, we could maybe also suggest organizing something at a community level on peering for non-technical staff. Why is that? Well, it's because in this type of training, face-to-face online, you can present to stakeholders such as banks, universities, insurance companies, because they're often important. They have a lot of content. The mining industry also, most of our countries have got mining industries and they're significant. So we could imagine a session where we explain to them the benefits of peering in an IXP, what benefits they could get out of such an initiative. And once they've understood that, explaining what needs done, the sort of early stages. And Samuel broached this, explaining that you need an autonomous ASN, that you need an XP address, etc. So a simple how-to guide, really, and how it could be set up, what impact it would have on their network. some organizations solely use internet provided by their internet provider. They don't really have a public address, an autonomous ASN, so they don't really have yet what they need to here to connect at the IXP. So a number of actions must be considered beyond just awareness raising. I think we need to work on these networks and direct people to the structures they need to approach so that they can have what they need to join. When there is a meeting in a country that involves these stakeholders, get involved, organise, sort of tag along to a meeting which brings together banks or insurance companies, mining companies, and try and see if we could have a short intervention time to explain what an IXP is and why it would be interesting for them. I think that gradually one, maybe two companies may take an interest and be proactive and talk about it. And we want to be also we want to provide them support. We want to help them acquire what they need to join the IXP. And ISOC has provided a lot and can provide more to facilitate this sort of process. If we're talking about an external organization, there's always a question of trust between you and that structure. We thought it was down to the IXP, but people could say, "Oh well, if it's you, if I'm dealing with you, that's good, that's fine." But it could be a cause of problems. So communication really is important, and we need to build up capacity. We need to explain things simply, say what's in it for them, for the country. And Francis will be able to tell us more about, for instance, South Africa. As was mentioned, it doesn't happen overnight. So we should be aware of not getting lost on the way. We need to stay focused on the destination. We need to keep moving forward. Thank you. Thank you. I don't see any other questions in the room. I don't see any other new questions in the Q&A either. I think I would like to share some experience with banks and IXPs. In Rwanda, we looked at who had the big networks. Obviously, the mobile network operators, okay, they were already part of the IXPs. The next one was ISPs for WiMAX, etc. And the next one were banks. So the IXP decided to consider how to target banks and how to present to them the added value for them. First of all, we asked ourselves, what's the benefit of banks? We can't have the same approach as we had with the other groups. So we devised a strategy which focused on safety, security. We told them, if you're joining the IXP, it's secure. You're putting two networks in contact. There's no risk of spying or anything. And the second point was telling them, if you put your services online, if they're accessible online, it means that all of your clients across the country will be able to access them. And whether the fiber that leaves the country is cut or not, whether internet is cut or not, it will always work for your clients. So depending on the group you want to target, you need to consider what's relevant to them. What was important as well was to identify across the banks who would be worth approaching to then bring in the others. So first we approach the National Bank. If we say that we have the National Bank or the IXP, then all the commercial ones will join. As I said, and I'm repeating something that's been emphasized before, it's important to consider how you sell a port on an IXP, but it can take up to 2 years between the time when you start discussions and the point when your new member is connected and sends traffic, because they need to have their ASN.
Okay.
They need a BGP capacity. So it takes between 1 and 2 years to get, for instance, the bank on the IXP. Of course, the National Bank was not the first one, but it convinced others to join. But there was a bank that understood the benefit very quickly. They asked for the AS and they were connected in less than a year, and the services were available online very quickly. Whether there was a cut in Uganda or in Mombasa, their services were always available. What helped them as well was telling them, well, if you have your IP sources, you won't need to change your services each time. And I think that was very good. We weren't talking to them about the IXP. We were talking about their resources and how to make things simpler for them. If you have your own AS, you don't need to get something new each time you change IS. There was a bit of time that needed to be dedicated at an early stage, but it paid off. I wanted to stress that point. Most banks access through their ISP. While they don't see the benefits of going directly to the IXP, because they say, oh, we've got access through our ISP. They're saying, well, you know, our internet service provider gives us what we need. Why should we join the IXP? And when they see the point of getting their own IP resource, then they see the benefit of joining the IXP. Indeed. Thank you. It reminds me of a slide that I had for communication with banks. And it was stating that they gain a lot through limited expenses when they join an IXP. Okay, thank you very much. Please, round of applause for our members of the panel. Thank you to all of you for your time. And I think we're going to take a break for now. The second session is coming to a close. We'll take a break and we'll start again at 2 o'clock with session 3. We'll focus on secure infrastructure development. We'll have ICANN and Afrinic and ISOC, and we're going to discuss how to improve safety or secure internet infrastructures. As internet is developing, as more and more of our life depends on internet, it's very important to secure these infrastructures, and we'll have time to listen to ICANN, Afrinic, and ISOC on how to do so. Thank you very much. We'll start punctually at 2 p.m. And there'll be another session, which will be more light touch, where we'll discuss tools, good practice, and this will be more flexible. We'll discuss tools, and it will be really up to us to talk about what we use, the best practices. It will be less formal. Okay? So thank you very much, and let's meet again at 2 o'clock. Lunch is served after the white tents that you'll see, so you have to get out, go to your left, go through the door, and the tents are on the other side. Okay. tea break, tea and coffee break is still there, but lunch is served outside, and we'll reconvene after. At the end of the corridor, you will find something.